We spend an awful lot of time trying to develop our skills and our knowledge. And yet when we look at people as the best manager we ever had or the worst manager that we ever had, an awful lot of times that stuff falls out at the bottom. It's not the top of the list. It's just that simple. And the reality is the character, the integrity, the honesty, the morals, the care that comes out when we've had one of our employees has had a death in the family. I mean, it's how we make our employees feel that is most remembered. And we make our employees feel a certain way primarily based on our values. Okay? People remember how you made them feel. They don't remember the numbers. They don't remember the bar charts. They don't remember the pie charts. They don't remember the ratios. Okay? But you can think back to your childhood, your teachers perhaps. Maybe they said something to you and it stayed with you to this day because they made you feel a certain way. Do great leaders always have all the answers? The answer is no. They don't. Great leaders tend to have the right questions. Great leaders tend to have the right questions. That's right. I think there are some people, maybe in this room, that feel like to be the great leader, you got to have all the answers. Okay? Great leaders don't have all the answers. They know when to ask, and they know what questions to ask. I would say the biggest fallacy that I see is people say, well, I already told them that. Well, you got to tell them more than once. Things like visions leak. Visions are like a bucket with a hole in them, or a bunch of holes in them. They leak. And if you don't reinforce things, if you don't say it more than once, and you don't change the way you say it, it kind of comes in and goes out, and it gets lost. Or it just kind of, leaks out, and then it's gone if it's not reinforced. So I think the biggest fallacy people have around communications is they say, well, I've already told them. I had my staff meeting. I had everybody in my conference room. I told them, this is what we're all going to go do. And then 2 weeks later, nobody, acted like they remembered what I said. And I'm like, well, how many times did you tell them after that? Well, I already told them. Well, I'm sorry, but that's insufficient. You got to do it more than once. If you have an all-hands-on-deck meeting, you have a quarterly meeting where all your employees come, you're doing an offsite or whatever, it can be as simple as picking somebody out that exhibited a certain kind of behavior. Hopefully it ties back to your values, but you're going to recognize Eric. You may not give him anything. Maybe you'll give him a night on the town. Maybe you'll give him a big bonus. It depends on what it is. But you're going to give public recognition to somebody for some certain behavior. That creates a symbol. That creates a symbol. How many times did it take Thomas Edison to invent the light bulb? It's over 1,000 times. Okay, over 1,000 times he failed. Okay, I don't know Thomas Edison. I also suspect David. He was probably a pretty sharp guy. But I can tell you the reason why we have a light bulb. It's not as much because Thomas Edison was smart as it was Thomas Edison was persistent. Mozart was told that he couldn't play. Michael Jordan's high school basketball coach told him what? He didn't make the team. He didn't make the basketball team. Now, I don't know Michael Jordan's basketball coach, but I can't imagine that he would have been that good. I don't think Michael Jordan was that good a basketball player in high school, or his coach wouldn't have told him that. I don't think Mozart was that good of a musician, or his musical instructor wouldn't have told him that. So what was it that they did? What was it that Michael Jordan did? I don't know if it was much before that or purely after that point, but maybe they got super motivated. But then what did they do? They practiced. They were proactive. They were practice. They practiced. And they practiced, and they practiced, and they practiced. Okay? Great leaders work intentionally. If there's something that you can't do, like speak in public, obviously that's going to derail your career, your leadership career. You will maybe, find an opportunity to get into a position where maybe not a lot of public speaking is required, but the reality is you're going to bump up against that that ceiling at some point in your career, right? There are weaknesses or developmental areas, to be politically correct, that will derail you, that you have to spend some energy on, okay? But just because you can't do everything, or there's some things that you can't do, you know, if they're not a derailer, you know, maybe you should accept it. You should just accept it. Great leaders intentionally accept themselves. They intentionally don't focus on the weak areas that won't derail them. You know, if the individual contributors in your organizations are, for the most part, doing their day-to-day operational job, right? For individual contributors, you expect that, I mean, with very few exceptions that I can think of, you expect them to be, for the most part, very tactical, right? They're doing the day-to-day operational job that they were hired to do. Okay? If you as the manager also do nothing but tactical, day-to-day, reactive stuff, who is looking out for the future of the company? But great leaders are deliberate. They're intentional. They're proactive, and they invest in themselves. They invest in their people. They invest in sustainable business improvements. And so there's some portion of their day that's spent on strategic matters. And I think it's just as applicable to you. It's just as applicable to you. It's not the job of the chief strategy officer to come up with all the business best practices. You know, it's not the job of HR to bring you what they think you should do to improve yourself. Okay? You got to own that. But create awareness of how much of your work is unconscious. How much of what you do is on autopilot? How much of what you do is reactive and not deliberate? Again, the average is 5% is conscious and 95% is unconscious. People just do the same old stuff day after day after day. I'm on autopilot, and I'm going to keep doing what I do. But as managers and hopefully as leaders, you can't get by with that. It's your responsibility to worry about some of the strategic issues of your company. And you're not going to do that unless you make the time, unless you work intentional. Great leaders are intentional.